When she touched me, she told me who I had slept with in the past, one by one. The first time I saw her, I was waist deep in a vending machine. Not metaphorically, literally waist deep. The observatory's supply shed had a stubborn old snack unit from 1997 that had long since decided to operate on its own terms. I had lost $1.75 and a significant portion of my dignity to a jammed bag of spicy pretzels. That's when the air changed. It wasn't dramatic. No swirling vortex, no Star Trek shimmer, not even a distant thunderclap, just the faint smell of ozone, like someone had ironed the fabric of reality a little too aggressively. I stood, pretzels forgotten, brushing dust off my jeans and contemplating whether hallucination was a symptom of expired Twinkies. Then she stepped into the doorway. She looked human at first glance. That was the dangerous part. You might not even notice the subtle shimmer of her skin or the way her eyes seemed to reflect back your own face like a still lake about to ripple. Her ears, however, betrayed her. Long, elegant, and pointed like antennae designed by a fashion-forward elf. They twitched independently as if tuning into frequencies I couldn't hear. I blinked. She tilted her head. We stared at each other for what felt like an uncomfortable eternity. Then she said, "Your pretzels are stuck." Her voice was calm, like an audiobook narrator reading instructions on how to defuse a bomb with nothing but optimism. "Yeah," I managed, "and so is my sense of normalcy." She took a step forward. "May I touch you?" Okay, that's a weird way to start a conversation. She didn't smile, but her eyes flickered with something mischievous. Consent is critical, especially when reality is involved. "Are you a hallucination brought on by snack-related despair?" "No," she said, walking up to me, her footsteps making a strange chime against the concrete. "But I'm flattered." She reached out gently. I didn't stop her. Curiosity is a disease with terrible timing. Her fingers brushed my forearm. There was no spark, no jolt, just warmth. Then she leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Amanda, Jay, Carla, the bartender with the uneven tattoos, and... oh, Brian, that was unexpected." I jerked away like I'd been stung by nostalgia. "What the hell was that?" "Names," she said simply. "The ones who've shared your bed." Wait, how do you, why do you, what?" She tapped the side of her head. "Temporal synesthesia. My species developed it as a survival mechanism. We interpret memories like scent. Touch helps." "Touch helps?" I said, flailing between offense and fascination. "You grazed my arm and downloaded my romantic history?" "Only the highlights," she said. "Some of it is incomplete. There was someone in a haunted house-themed motel. The memory is fuzzy. Was that consensual?" "Define consensual," I muttered, then instantly regretted it. She tilted her head again. "I see." "Wait, no. You don't see. You see too much. This is a violation of, I don't even know what, but it's definitely a violation of snack time boundaries." She stepped back, lifting her hands. "Apologies. I forget humans don't process intertemporal intimacy in the same way. That sentence needs a warning label." She turned, scanning the shed's interior like someone inspecting a secondhand spaceship. "I was told this observatory held echoes. It holds raccoons, old coffee, and a collection of unsent postcards. Echoes would be an upgrade." She walked to the broken vending machine and placed her hand on the glass. The pretzels dropped instantly. "You're magic," she shrugged. "I understand outdated mechanics." That is the most seductive sentence I've ever heard. She turned, her expression shifting slightly, softening. "You joke to manage stress." "Yep, that's my love language." We stood there, the air pulsing faintly around her like a curtain catching wind. "What do I call you?" I asked. She hesitated. "The name you'd understand is Varela. Sounds like a prescription drug that warns of mild hallucinations and hot flashes." She smiled this time. It hit me harder than I expected. "What's your name?" "Jared," I said too quickly. "Or Jay. Or that guy who talks to himself when he thinks no one's listening." She nodded solemnly. "I've heard your internal monologues. They are chaotic." "You what?" "Residuals," she said, waving her hand like she was brushing away a cobweb. "The mind leaks. Most of the time you're thinking about soup." Yeah, okay, that's fair." She walked past me, out the door and into the twilight. I followed like an idiot following an oddly hot hallucination into the desert. Outside, the stars were blinking erratically, as though someone had forgotten the sky's password and was trying to guess it. "The veil is thinning," she said, almost to herself. "The what?" "The distance between time states. It's warping." "Like a bad sci-fi plot?" She turned to me, serious now. Like your memories are becoming weapons. I blinked. My what now? She stepped closer again. You're a nexus. You've been observed. They saw me observing you. Who's they? The ones who believe memory is dangerous, who think your past is a liability. My past is mostly takeout and social awkwardness. Exactly, she said, and they hate unpredictability. I sat down hard on an old toolbox. So, just to recap, you're a space empath with freakishly pretty ears. You touched me, rifled through my dating life, and now interdimensional something or others are mad because my memories are messy? Yes, I'm going to need those pretzels. She handed them to me without breaking eye contact. There's more, she said quietly. It's not just your past I can see. I froze with a pretzel halfway to my mouth. It's the future, she said, and it's the part that we left the observatory before sunrise, which felt like an achievement, given I hadn't left that place in 4 months, unless you counted walking 20 feet to urinate behind a cactus. Varela insisted it was necessary. The longer you remain here, the easier you are to track, she said, as if that was a perfectly reasonable thing to say to someone whose greatest concern yesterday was whether raccoons could be bribed with Pop-Tarts. The vehicle we commandeered was technically mine, an RV I'd bought years ago during a poorly conceived plan to write a travel blog. The blog lasted 3 posts, one of which was entirely about the horror of unfamiliar laundromats. I opened the door and nearly tripped over an old keyboard synthesizer and a bucket of expired astronaut ice cream. Varela stepped in like a diplomat visiting a very low-budget foreign embassy. You live in a time capsule, she said. I live in a rolling crisis with nostalgic decor, I corrected. She ran her fingers over the dashboard and muttered something in a language that sounded like a modem crying. The engine started immediately. Is that telepathy? No, your alternator was clogged with spider webs and resentment. We drove west, partly because the highway was quiet and partly because Varela said the anomalies tended to follow magnetic lines that behaved slightly drunk in this part of the country. I offered her a bag of stale trail mix. She picked out the chocolate pieces and left the rest with the precision of a raccoon wearing gloves. So, I said, chewing slowly, you mentioned something terrifying about my future. Just casually drop that in between psychic flashbacks and snack diplomacy. She looked at me, serious now. You survived something you weren't supposed to. That's extremely vague and not at all helpful. That's the problem with futures. They don't like to be pinned down. We stopped for gas in a town so small it didn't have a real name, just a sign that said welcome, and another sign below it that said, we know. The gas station was run by an elderly man who wore 2 pairs of sunglasses and insisted that time was a conspiracy invented by calendar companies. Varela touched his arm. He blinked once, then handed her a peach soda and said, You don't belong here. I get that a lot, she replied. Back on the road, I turned the conversation back to more immediate concerns. Why me? Why my brain? Why my tragically inconsistent romantic history? She stared ahead, watching the horizon ripple under the morning heat. You have unusually high temporal permeability. It's rare. Your memories echo louder than most. I don't even have a diary. Doesn't matter. Some minds are open books. Yours is a pop-up. So I'm being hunted by memory-phobic aliens because my brain is a holographic scrapbook? They're not aliens in the way you think. Oh, here we go. They aren't from a planet. They're from a collapsed time field. They don't occupy space. They occupy probability. That doesn't sound better. It isn't. We pulled into a motel around noon. The sign outside read, Stay here, or don't, and the O in motel had been replaced with a hand-drawn question mark. Varela insisted we needed to rest the timeline. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I figured it translated to nap while you can. Inside the room, the decor looked like someone had tried to recreate a 1970s detective show using furniture left behind by ghosts. I flopped onto the bed. Varela sat cross-legged on the floor and began assembling a strange device from parts of the coffee maker, a smoke alarm, and 3 AA batteries she fished out of a drawer labeled Do Not Open. You building a bomb or a juicer? Temporal stabilizer. Cool. Very chill. That's what I thought. Sleep, she said without looking up. I don't think I'll be sleeping anytime soon. My brain is still trying to catch up with the concept of collapsing probability and mind-reading space elves. I'm not an elf. says the woman with ears that could pick up jazz from another dimension. She finished assembling the device and set it on. It beeped once, then made a sound like a cat sighing in reverse. What does that do? It reduces timeline bleed. Bleed? Residual futures trying to overwrite the present. You'll know it's working if you stop remembering things that haven't happened yet. That's oddly comforting and wildly unsettling. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. My thoughts kept jumping. Images of places I didn't know, people I hadn't met, a woman in a red dress crying on a rooftop. Varela noticed me tensing. It'll pass, she said. Your consciousness is expanding. Think of it like a balloon being inflated by potential. I always hated balloons. I know. I closed my eyes and tried not to think. That didn't work. I thought about Amanda, about Carla, about the woman who gave me a book of poetry and said, "You don't read enough to deserve me." I thought about how Varela had said their names like she'd lived through each moment. I opened one eye. Hey, do you feel everything you say? I don't choose to. It's why my kind rarely interact directly. We become too entangled. That sounds exhausting. It's worse when we like someone. I paused. You like me? Don't make it weird. Too late? She stood and walked to the window. Outside, the wind had picked up. Dust danced in lazy spirals. Somewhere in the distance, a payphone rang. There hadn't been a payphone for miles. They've found us, she said. I sat up. What now? They don't travel through space. They arrive through association. Can we unassociate? She turned, her face still calm. We run. I grabbed my bag, shoved a pillow under my arm, and tripped over the coffee table. Graceful, she said. I meant to do that. We bolted, the stabilizer still humming. As we reached the RV, I looked back and saw the air over the motel begin to bend. Not explode, not burn, just fold like a blanket being laid down gently across a sleeping city. They don't destroy, Varela whispered. They overwrite. I started the RV. It coughed once, then revved to life like it had a grudge. We pulled onto the road as the sky shimmered behind us. I glanced over at Varela, who was calmly sipping the peach soda. You always this calm during interdimensional pursuit? She shrugged. Only when I'm not driving. Great, I'll scream for both of us. The road stretched ahead, bending slightly in ways it shouldn't. Varela opened the glove compartment, pulled out an old mixtape labeled for dramatic escapes, and popped it into the deck. As Queen's Don't Stop Me Now began to play, she looked at me and grinned. Let's see if memory can be outrun. I floored it. The highway stretched ahead like a glitch that refused to resolve. Every so often, the lines in the center flickered, rearranged themselves, or once spelled out my high school locker combination. I decided not to tell Varela. Some things are better left unmentioned until they show up in therapy. She sat in the passenger seat, fiddling with the stabilizer she'd rebuilt using parts from the motel coffee maker, a pair of sunglasses, and a fork she insisted was chronologically neutral. I didn't ask what that meant. I'd learned better. We need to get to a convergence point, she said without looking up. Sounds important. Where is it? Nebraska. I slammed on the brakes. A tumbleweed bounced off the windshield with a soft thwump. You want me to go to Nebraska? Yes. Nebraska? The state? There's only one. I've spent my whole life avoiding Nebraska. I once rerouted a flight to avoid a layover in Omaha. Then it's the perfect place. They'll never expect you there. That's either genius or a spectacularly convenient plot device. It's both. We kept driving, crossing into what I generously called a town. 4 mailboxes, a gas station, and a diner that looked like it had given up during the Reagan administration. We stopped mostly because I was hungry, and slightly because Varela claimed she could smell a temporal fracture in the pie. Inside, the place smelled like old coffee and secrets. A waitress with bright pink hair and a name tag that said Deb took one look at Varela and immediately poured her a cup of something that shimmered like liquid nostalgia. You're early, Deb said. I'm never early, Varela replied, sipping the cup and nodding approvingly. You changed the recipe. You changed the timeline, I changed the crust. Fair's fair. I stared at them. Do you two know each other? We met once, Deb said. Next week. I pinched the bridge of my nose. I swear, every time I think I've reached the bottom of the weirdness barrel, you two start digging. Deb slid a slice of pie in front of me and gave me a look that said, eat or be judged. I complied. It tasted like regret and cinnamon. Varela leaned across the table, her tone low. This place is safe for now, it's buffered. From what? From them. Right, them, the probability squids or whatever. They're not squids. Metaphorically, they feel squid adjacent. They're closer to logic storms. Still terrifying. They are not emotional. They are inevitability. Deb leaned on the counter. They call themselves the Witnesses. I turned. You too? She shrugged. I dabble. The Witnesses, I repeated. That's a very culty name. They exist outside of linear time. They observe. They correct anomalies. Wait, I'm an anomaly? Deb pointed a fork at me. You remember things you shouldn't. People, events. There's a version of you that never met her, and yet you still dream of her voice. I looked at Varela. She didn't deny it. I told you were leaking, she said, as if that was supposed to help. We stayed at the diner longer than we should have. Deb told stories that didn't quite end, and Varela started sketching something in a napkin using coffee as ink. I watched the clock on the wall tick backward once, then catch up to itself with an audible click. I considered saying something, then didn't. As we got up to leave, Deb handed me a small object wrapped in wax paper. It looked like a coin, except it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Keep this on you, she said. If you start hearing music that doesn't exist, bite down on it. Cool. That's not ominous at all. It's made of condensed probability and aluminum foil. Very sturdy. We left the diner, and as we reached the RV, Varela stopped suddenly and looked at the sky. I followed her gaze. It looked wrong. Not dangerous exactly, just off, like someone had tried to Photoshop a cloud and left it half-rendered. They're scanning, she said. For what? For confirmation. Of what? She turned, her voice lower. That you're unstable enough to erase. Well, they're not wrong. We got back on the road. Varela set up the stabilizer on the dashboard and adjusted something that made the glove compartment hum like a contented bee. I kept my eyes on the road, but noticed that every time we passed a broken billboard or a rusted sign, it seemed to flicker with unfamiliar names, ones I hadn't heard since college. Some I hadn't even spoken aloud before. They're surfacing your forgotten data, she said. Even my bad poetry? Especially your bad poetry. That's just cruel. We pulled off the road that night and camped in an empty parking lot behind a half-demolished bowling alley. I built a small fire using wood I found in the RV's emergency box and what was left of a self-help book called Manifesting Your Inner Plumber. Varela sat nearby, tracing loops in the air with her finger. They glowed faintly, symbols I didn't recognize. Is that alien language? It's not a language. It's memory math. That feels made up. All language is made up. She pointed her finger at my forehead and tapped it. You think in spirals, that's rare. Most humans loop or branch. I knew there was a reason I sucked at spreadsheets, she tilted her head. Your timeline is unusually thick. Again, sounds made up? It means you persist, even in collapsed frames. I leaned back, watching the stars twitch. Is this really about me, or are you just using me as a backpack through human history? She didn't answer right away. Then softly, you're more than a node. You're an anchor. Great, so I'm basically a paperweight for the multiverse. You're more like a favorite mistake. That's alarmingly poetic. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small device, flat, metallic, with a single glowing symbol. She handed it to me. What is it? A contingency. In case you ever remember something you shouldn't and the world tries to forget you in return. I held it, unsure whether to laugh or throw it into the fire. Why me? Because you're already breaking. That doesn't feel like a compliment. It's a beginning. I looked down at the device, then back at her. You're not going to leave, are you? Not unless you ask me to. Well, now I can't, because that's emotionally manipulative. She smiled. I didn't sleep much that night, but when I did, I dreamed of a version of myself who'd never left the observatory, who'd never met her, who'd never remembered anything at all. And in the dream, I was smiling. And it terrified me. The convergence point was marked by a sign that said, Welcome to Nebraska, home of the world's largest non-interventional time rip. Beneath that, someone had scrawled, Please don't feed the anomalies in permanent marker. Varela stared at it for a full minute, then pulled out her translator cube and shook it. It made a sad trombone sound and fizzled. This entire state is laughing at physics, she said. It's Nebraska, I said. Laughing at things is how they cope. We drove into the town of Ripton, population unknown. Literally, Someone had scratched the number off the sign and replaced it with yes. As we rolled down the main street, I counted 3 antique shops, a bowling alley doubling as a tax office, and one ominously empty playground where the swings moved even though there was no wind. That last part was either supernatural or sponsored by an overachieving squirrel. "This is the town?" I asked. "This is the skin of the town," Varela said, checking her device. "The real town is beneath." "Beneath what?" She pointed to a manhole cover in front of a hardware store called Screw It, Let's Fix It. I parked the RV. "No elevator?" I asked. She smiled. "Elevators are linear." We pried the cover off with a crowbar I found in the RV's emergency kit wedged between a fondue set and a foam finger that said, "Go Planet." Varela descended first, disappearing into the dark like someone who'd already memorized the shadows. I followed, one rung at a time, until the smell of rust gave way to something sharper. Ozone, maybe? Or the scent of time trying to hold its breath. At the bottom was a corridor lined with mirrors. Each mirror reflected not our bodies, but moments. A first kiss I'd forgotten. Varela standing in a room that hadn't existed yet. One mirror showed me walking away from her, face blank. "Are these real?" I asked. "They're possibilities," she said. "Fragments filtered by proximity." "To what?" "To you." We reached a heavy metal door that pulsed faintly with light. She placed her palm on it, and the metal whispered like it recognized her. It opened inward, revealing a wide chamber shaped like a spiraled shell. In the center, on a pedestal made from polished memory stone, a material that looked like glass and thunder at the same time, was the object she'd been talking about since Arizona. The temporal core. I stepped closer. "It looks like a lava lamp made by someone with too much access to quantum theory." "It holds pre-selected outcomes," she said. "The witnesses use these to enforce narrative order. They inject it into timelines that resist resolution." "Let me guess," I said. "We're a resistance." "Sort of. You're the variable. I'm just the carrier." "So I'm like a rogue patch update for the universe." "Exactly." I circled the core slowly. Inside, memories swirled. Some mine, some hers, some that made no sense at all. A girl standing in a red field. A boy chasing his own shadow. A planet shaped like a Mobius strip with windows. "You said they want to erase me. They want to overwrite you with a version that makes fewer waves. That's cold. It's efficient. Still cold." She handed me a small shard of the memory stone, now pulsing faintly. "Touch the core with this, and it scrambles their narrative anchor." "Scramble it how?" "Think of it as replacing the plot twist with interpretive dance." "That's not comforting," she shrugged. "It's worked before. Once. Sort of. With some side effects." "What kind of side effects?" "Temporary identity loss, aggressive déjà vu, and spontaneous multilingual humming. So college, basically." Before I could make another joke, the chamber not violently, more like the world hiccuping. Varela's ears twitched, then flattened slightly. "They're here." I spun around. The mirrors on the walls began to ripple, and from them stepped figures, tall, silver, almost featureless, their bodies reflecting nothing. They didn't walk. They moved like edits in film, appearing where they weren't, and then pretending they'd always been there. Varela pulled a compact-looking tool from her coat and pointed it at the nearest one. It hummed. Nothing happened. "They've adapted," she said. "They always adapt," I shouted. "That's their thing, isn't it? What do we do?" She looked at me, her expression not panicked but annoyed, like someone realizing they left the stove on mid-intergalactic crisis. "We accelerate." She grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the core. The witnesses didn't chase. They didn't have to. They simply reached toward us, and with each motion, pieces of memory peeled away from the air like strips of film burning. I held the shard. It pulsed with a rhythm. My heartbeat, maybe, or the memory of it. "Now!" she shouted. I slammed the shard into the core. For a moment, nothing. Then everything. The chamber exploded with color. Not light, color as sound, as taste, as thought. I saw Varela as a child, alone in a chamber of stars. I saw myself choosing to stay at the observatory instead of running. I saw every lover, every regret, every lie I told to avoid telling the truth. The witnesses staggered. One crumbled like fog collapsing. Another shattered into fragments of what looked like old bedtime stories. "Keep holding," she yelled. "I can't feel my fingers. They're probably stuck in a memory loop." "That's not helpful." She stepped beside me and touched the core with both hands. Her eyes went white, then gold, then something beyond color entirely. The core vibrated and released a sound that echoed backward, so loud it arrived in my brain before it left the chamber. And then silence. The witnesses were gone, the mirrors had cracked, and Varela collapsed. I caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was colder than before, flickering slightly. She looked at me and whispered, "Don't let me forget you. You're not dying, are you?" Technically, no. Metaphysically, unclear. She closed her eyes. The core dimmed. I held her tighter, and from somewhere outside the chamber, a voice whispered, "You changed the story." I looked down at her. "Yeah," I said, "and I liked the weird parts best." She didn't wake up for 3 days. Technically, we weren't counting in days anymore, since time had gone a little abstract after the whole poke the core with a memory shard stunt, but that's how long it felt. Maybe longer. The core had melted into something the size and consistency of a warm jelly bean, which I placed in the RV's glove compartment next to an expired pack of gum and a flashlight shaped like a... I figured if it was going to rewrite history again, it should at least know what mediocrity looked like. Varela stirred the morning I ran out of canned soup. She sat up, blinked, looked around the RV and said, "Did I dream you were talking to a cactus about moral philosophy?" "Nope, that was Tuesday." She rubbed her temples. "I feel like I was rebooted by someone who forgot to install empathy." "You're back," I said. "Mostly. You missed a thrilling 24 hours of me screaming into an empty desert and attempting to program a toaster with the stabilizer." "Did it work?" "The toaster is now haunted." She smiled faintly and coughed once. A small burst of glittery static floated out of her mouth and vanished. "I taste paradox," she said. "Better than truck stop coffee." We stayed off-grid for a while. Technically, we were still in the grid, just driving around the outer edges like someone who's too nervous to play the main storyline in a video game. The witnesses didn't return. At least, not visibly. Sometimes birds would patterns overhead, or I'd find messages scribbled into rest-stop stalls like, "The past is not a receipt." But otherwise, the world continued pretending it made sense. Varela adjusted, slowly. Some days she remembered everything. Other days she thought my name was Kev and called the RV the liminal taco. I didn't mind. I wasn't exactly stable either. Memory was slippery now. Some mornings I woke up with old emotions in my throat and no idea who they belonged to. One night I burst into tears over a sock commercial. Neither of us mentioned it again. We figured out the new rules together. Rule 1, don't engage with your reflection too long. It remembers the other timelines. Rule 2, if a payphone rings, let Varela answer. She speaks the language of metaphors better than I do. Rule 3, never eat pie if the filling is flickering. Around week 4, we got a postcard from Deb. No return address, just a drawing of a raccoon holding a clock and the words, "You're on schedule." I laughed until I nearly choked. We eventually found our way to the ocean. Not deliberately. We were heading toward a supposed memory-free zone in Utah, but took a wrong turn and ended up on the coast. Varela stood at the water's edge, her ears twitching slightly, and said, "This timeline smells like kelp and mild redemption." "I'll take it," I said. "We've had worse." I once landed in a reality made entirely of competitive slogans. "Is that where you learned sarcasm?" "No, that was from your brain." She picked up a small stone and rolled it between her fingers. It shimmered briefly, displaying a snippet of her childhood, a room with floating books and zero-gravity tantrums. She smiled and handed it to me. "You've changed," she said. "I shower more often," I replied. "You don't run from your own thoughts anymore." I nodded. "I'm still scared of them, though." "Good. Fear is honest." We walked along the shore in silence for a while. The core fragment in the glove box had gone dormant, or possibly gone on vacation. I didn't ask. I was learning to stop needing all the answers. Sometimes things didn't need to be solved. Sometimes they just needed to be held for a while and then set down gently. That night, around a fire built from driftwood and half a beach chair, Varela reached into her coat and pulled out the stabilizer. It looked different now, sleeker, humming in a comforting way. "I think we can seal the breach," she said. "Permanently?" "Enough." I stared at the flames. "Will it erase everything again?" "No, but it will settle the echoes, quiet the ones that scream. And us?" She hesitated. "We'll stay, but we won't be loud anymore." "Loud?" "You won't see the names on signs. The mirrors will go still. We'll just be people again." That sounds hard. It is, but it's peaceful. I took the stabilizer from her and turned it over in my hands. You sure? No, she said, but we deserve to choose. So we did. We activated it just before dawn. The device unfolded like an origami crane stretching its wings, and a soft hum pulsed through the sand. The air wobbled, shimmered, then calmed. The world didn't change, not immediately, but the tension eased, like a room remembering to exhale. After that, we stayed in one place for a while, a small town near the coast. I got a job fixing appliances with a guy who claimed to have been abducted by time-traveling dolphins. Varela started teaching yoga to retirees, though she occasionally forgot which direction gravity was supposed to go. No one questioned it. Small towns are good at quietly agreeing that strange people are just from somewhere else. We didn't stop being who we were, but we let ourselves be now. Some nights when the sky flickers slightly and the wind carries the scent of another version of reality, she'll reach over and take my hand. I don't flinch anymore. I don't ask what she sees, because I've learned that some futures aren't meant to be avoided. Some are meant to be lonely, without maps or memory shards or timelines screaming for resolution. Just two people, holding hands, in a world that finally decided to make space for them. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to my channel and like it for more videos.